Welcome to this week's edition of Ask the Author on Spot.ph, well, our Facebook page anyway. I'm Joe, editor in chief, and with me tonight is MM, our managing editor.
Hello,
Um,
hello.
our guest tonight is the author and editor of 16 books, including each sold separately, Poems Selected and New, which was published in 2018. He writes for the Philippine Daily Inquirer, covering mostly entertainment, so movies like the Marvel franchise and exciting other exciting Hollywood blockbusters like that. He has edited the best-selling series of Young Blood anthologies based on the Inquirer column, and he also teaches at the Ateneo de Manila's Department of Communication. Um, our guest is Mr. Ruel De Vera. Hi, Rui.
Hey Joe. Hi everybody.
Hello.
Hi MM.
How are
Hello.
Hi.
you?
I'm alright. I'd like to add to that do I do entertainment? Most of what I do is really books, books, books. I do a
Okay.
lot of books. So that's really what I write a lot about, but we try to do as much of the big entertainment as we can.
Mm, okay. So,
So there.
I wanted to ask first.
Yes.
You're known for your own books aside from being in charge of choosing essays that get published in the Youngblood
Yeah.
column and on Inquirer. What have you been
Mhm.
reading during the quarantine?
Everything. One of the weird things that happened during the quarantine was that first the mail stopped. So that
Mm,
meant the book depository all stopped. So I
right.
had a ton of books by book depository. The bookstores were closed, so you couldn't go out. So I had to hunt around my house and find every single book that I hadn't read yet,
Mm.
discovering that about 80% of the books in my apartment had not yet been read. So
Oh,
I've been working my
80%.
way. Yes, they're beautiful and wonderfully shelved, but they have not yet been read. So I've started
Mm-hmm.
reading the books which I hadn't read yet in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also started rereading the books that I like.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been wonderful. I've discovered a lot of books which I didn't think I would like because I get like review copies and sometimes you don't think you like them. Like
Mm-hmm.
Eleanor Oliphant, that was a pretty good book. I was really surprised.
I just
That
finished
was
reading that. Writing tuloy.
that
Just
was that
finished
was
reading that.
that
It's
was
it,
that was excellent.
yeah.
So I usually prefer reading nonfiction to fiction.
Mm.
So the occasional nice novel. I've been catching up on, so a lot of what I read is really graphic literature,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have a lot of comic books that I am reading, and a lot of big books. Just catching up on right now on my bedside. I can tell you this because I just pulled out a whole bunch of books to read. I am rereading Murakami's 1Q84, which is my
Mm-hmm.
favorite Murakami book because
Mm-hmm.
I really like reading books about books. So I am reading that book again, and it
Mm-hmm.
has been uh, wonderful. Finally, some of the mail has been coming in, not from the Phil Post, but from delivery services. And so I've been reading some new stuff that's been coming in. So just reading a lot of really nice books. I'm reading the Alexander Hamilton book by Ron Chernow because
Mm-hmm.
I like the musical, and so I wanted to know what was up with that. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
very thick book, so that's taking me a lot of time to read. So there, I've also been reading a lot of Kiko Machine. I told Manix Abrera the other day that Kiko Machine has been helping me through the pandemic because it's been such a help seeing such absurd humor And I told him that if he ever made a T-shirt that said Schrodinger's Jowa on it, I would buy it because that's really funny. So just a mix of everything. I've been trying to make my way through as many books as I can, and I have a sneaking suspicion that by the end of this pandemic, I may have been able to read a lot of those books that I haven't read yet. So
Mm.
working on that.
Okay.
Okay. So let's go back to Young Blood. I'm
Sure.
just curious, how do you choose the pieces that make it to the compilation book?
All right. So the first Young Blood book came out in the late 90s. The original Young Blood, called The Best of Young Blood, was an Anvil book. And the first set of books was originally chosen by Letty Magsanok, the late Letty Magsanok, George Aruta, and Ceres Doyo. And they were the first set. I was brought in to organize the chapters and make them. So the first book, I wasn't part of the ones who chose, but I was the one who put them together. But the second up to the the second up to the seventh book, I was involved with choosing the books. Originally, it was with Mr. George Aruta, who has now retired. And then it was with Pam Pastor and Chato Garzaliano and JV Rufino. And now with Gibbs Cadiz, who is the opinion editor. What happens is, every 2 years, we take all of the young blood that has ever been published during those 2 years. And we go through every single one. We read all the young blood that was published. And then we shortlist, and then we shortlist some more, and then we fight a little about which ones make in and which ones don't. It's a very bloody process. That
Young
is the one that takes the longest, especially when people have attachments to certain pieces. There are always some considerations, like when young blood pieces come out in the newspaper, sometimes they're very timely, but by the time they come to the compilation, they're dated.
Blood.
So you want to have essays that people can still read, even though it's already been 4 years later, because that's how the cycle works. The young blood books come out every other year, but the stories in the book come out like 2 years before. And you want representations, but you don't want it to be dated. Like, we have young blood books where people are just getting their cell phones. And then 2 years later, you have a young blood book where it's Tinder. And the next young blood books will probably have anything from Snapchat to TikTok in
Mm.
it. So actually, if you see the young blood books through the years, and there are actually people who own all seven,
Mm.
you could see the progression of the personal technology the kids have been using.
Mhm.
Most importantly, I think the most important thing in young blood is always the writing. It's the first step. I understand the kids are under 30. That's the number one rule in young blood. You have to be under 30. But to survive the first gauntlet, you have to stand out amidst the stuff that's already been published. And that's not easy, because these are people who are already good. So the
Mm.
work has to be excellent. The second is the experience has to be authentic. So we don't use a lot of um, I am talking to a divine presence. Why is the world like this? We don't use a lot of that. We
Mhm.
use a lot of, oh, I used to take the bus every day. And one day when I was on the bus, there was this girl reading this book I really liked. And so I went up and asked her, and we had a good
Mm.
talk. And then she got off the bus. And then now I take the bus every day, hoping that I'll see her again.
Mhm.
I don't ever know what happened to that story. It's one of our favorite young blood stories. But the authenticity of the experience, the uniqueness of it,
Mhm.
that's sort of what we really look for. So
Mm.
the Young Blood essays are fun to read. I mean, the reading the whole thing is such a big project, but it's always happy when the books come out, especially because the authors are so happy and their parents are so happy.
Mm-hmm.
And We always want that. And we plan to continue the series. We're already coming out next year with Young Blood 8. So that is in 2021. So that is something we're looking forward to.
Mm. I was actually going to ask if there's one essay in particular that's stood out for you. Can you think of one aside from the one with the bus?
The bus.
Okay, that's a lot of essays. Hmm. The ones where the young moms, essays about young moms, because they
Mm-hmm.
always have to challenge. It's an experience that I think most people don't really think about in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what it's like to be under 30 and be a single mom.
Mm.
So that's been on. Let me check a second. Hmm. I'm just here. I prepared. Okay.
So nakamark ko ano yung mga favorites mo in each edition.
Yeah. Mm. Oh, I like the essays which were written by people who started under 30 and are now no longer 30,
Mm.
but did a lot of stuff. Um, Teddy Casino, who is
Mm-hmm.
an activist, wrote an essay
Mm.
in the first Young Blood collection, and you can already see that even back then that he was dedicated to what he was doing. Tinderella, which was an essay that came out fairly recently, was interesting because we had never seen that kind of dating before.
Mm.
And for people who aren't aware what Tinder is, that's sort of a weird experience. So that was also quite interesting. I always like essays which talk about how much books are important to them, even
Mm.
though it is a um, modern digital age, and they keep talking about how books remain something that is precious to them
Mm-hmm.
because their parents taught them how to read and that kind of thing. So lots of that.
Mm.
Aside
Sorry, there's
from
just
tech,
so many essays just in my head. Okay.
Okay.
okay. So aside from the technological advancements,
Mm, mm.
has the scope of topics of view or views of the youth changed in the past years? I mean, judging from the
Yes.
thesis.
Okay. So every young blood collection needs to have a certain set of things in it. I love my dad or my mom. Thank you for what you've done for me, especially for those who worked really hard or had difficult jobs. Second, man, looking for a job is difficult. Being
Mm.
independent is difficult. Learning a new skill like swimming or driving or a bicycling is hard. And there are
Mm.
lessons to be learned from it. But one of the things that unfortunately we've seen a lot of recently is we've seen a lot of essays about death, about people who were killed, and how people react to it, how people react to the tragedies that are going on around them. And the young people don't know how to cope with it because it's not
Mm.
something that they're used to. And so you have a range of experiences about how do we cope with a world where death is more common than ever. We have a lot of essays asking, this is an important question. Does the Philippines have to be like this? And should I
Mm.
stay?
Yeah.
That's a big question. We get that a lot because and very well argued. Like like I want to stay because, and then right next to it is we need to leave right now. We actually
Mm,
had that in the last issue. We had back to back essays arguing against different things. And it shows you that the young people now are coming of age at an earlier time than they used to. They don't really enjoy the kind of what I would say the light kind of leisurely growing up we had when we were younger.
mm,
They're worried, they're anxious. Also because they have a lot more access to information now. So because of that, they are pondering a lot of things and asking themselves questions quite early.
mm.
Questions aren't easy anymore. They're not
Right.
answerable. They're not answerable by a yes or a no or because God said so or my dad said so or these things.
Mhm.
People are questioning and they have to figure out the answers on their own. And the way that they figure it out is they talk it out or they write it out.
Right.
And that's one thing that people are seeing.
Well, speaking of young people, you teach at an Ateneo. Can you tell us what
Yes.
titles you have on your required reading list and why? Not all of them, kahit your favorites lang.
So I've been teaching in Ateneo for 25 years, and I don't have books per se. I
Mhm.
assign them. I keep changing different topics because you cannot keep assigning them the same articles. They will not get into it,
Mhm.
into the stuff. You have to keep giving them new material. So, to be honest, I make
Mhm.
them read the Time 100. Important for them to understand these are the important people, right? These are
Mhm.
people who are chosen by time as being the
Mhm.
most influential people. Understand why they're important because they made a change in the world. And then I make them read people's sexiest, most beautiful people because
Mhm.
then they understand that there's the other aspect of it. And occasionally we discuss FHM's 100 because they have to understand that there is that other dimension. It's part popularity contest, and it's also a different dimension to how people look at what is important to them.
Mhm.
So it's not so much me telling them this is what you have to do. You have to decide for yourself who are the people whom you want to read about, and more importantly, who are the people you want to write about. Because when you
Mhm.
write about someone and publish it, you put a spotlight on them. And whether good or bad, it's a form of endorsement.
Mhm.
It's a form of agency. So you have to choose who to write about whether or not you like the person. You are presenting yourself as someone saying, I think you need to know about this person. So choose carefully. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what your reason is as long as it's clear to you. Like,
Mhm.
one reason I cannot accept is, oh, because sikat siya. That is the weakest reason of all. Because in 6 months' time, no one will read what you wrote.
Mhm.
One of my favorite stories that I keep making my students read is a piece from Sports Illustrated about a crew member, a rower
Mhm.
from a California school who developed cancer. And she kept rowing even though she had cancer. And during the last race she had, um, they lost Uh, you were second place, but all of the competitors clapped for her. I mean,
Mm.
everybody clapped for her, and it was a story that I show my students. It's very long. I like showing my students really long stories to show them that you shouldn't be afraid to interview tons of people. You shouldn't be afraid to interview and write really long pieces because the internet
Mm.
is infinite, and that sometimes you do not get the ending that you want, and that is the story that you want to write, because the ending you do not want or expect is the one you will remember. So
Mm.
those are the things that we do in school. I try.
Okay. Um, I think it's a good time to remind our viewers that you can put your questions in the comments. We'll be asking them later.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a party trick that I want to
Okay.
do. So most important books for me that I've done. I just
Mm.
wanted to do a list of the books that I've done which are personally very important to me. Because when I started writing in college, all I wanted to do was write books,
Mm-hmm.
not even journalism. I just wanted to write books. That's still my favorite thing to do in the world. I want to write books. And so my first book came from Anvil. So this is called The
Uh-huh.
Most Careful of Stars. This is, I think, 97. This was my first book of poetry. And the poems are really quite old, but this is my first book, and your first book is your baby.
Mm.
So this is super important to me to this day. Um, one of my
Does
bucket
Anvil
list
still have it?
books.
Or out of print na siya?
It's it's out of print na. Many of these books are out of print.
Mm, rare
Um,
na.
this is
Sorry.
this is I did a series of travel anthologies. I love travel writing. So this is the second one. The first one was called Writing Home. So the first one, Writing Home, was a book about writers writing about their hometowns. This is the second one called Connecting Flights, which is
Mm-hmm.
about writers writing about other places. So this is not nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
This is poetry,
Nice.
fiction. So it's all about different places. So I love this collection because I get to put together a lot of different writers,
Mm.
and that's
Pahiram
great.
naman.
That's still
No,
in print.
seriously, I wanna borrow it.
Bucket list book. I
Mm.
wanted to write a non-fiction novel, and in 2001, Bookmark gave me a chance to write this book. So it's
Mm.
called The Zero Hour, The Personal War of Basilio Valdez. So Basilio Valdez was the personal doctor of Manuel L. Quezon. So he had to escape the Philippines during the
Mm.
war. He went on a submarine, he went to the States, but he left his wife and his adoptive child behind in
Mm.
Manila. So he had to come back for them after the war. So I loved doing this book. It took a very long time. It was my first hardcover, as you can see. And I
It's nice,
love
ah.
this book because it was on my bucket list. It's still available from Bookmark. So
May
I love this
bookmark
book
pa
very
ba?
much. Meron naman. Meron pa. Um,
I don't know where that is.
bucket
Sorry,
Oo nga.
guys.
buck, bucket list books. I wanted to always write a sports book. It was on my bucket list. We don't have a lot of sports books in this country.
Mm.
So in 2002, the Ateneo won the UAAP championship, and I wrote this book. It's called "It's About Time." It is a wonderful thing because it was Ateneo versus LaSalle, and it's our time. And so this has like pictures and everything. And I love this book. It's also out of print, but I love this book. Its timing was excellent, and I reread it now and then because it was an unexpected championship. And sports books are the greatest. You should read more sports books. And people in the Philippines need to write more of them because we love sports. And my final show and
Basketball
tell,
lang.
hoy hindi, pwedeng iba. Please read the Young Blood books. We have a lot of them. There's one more coming next year. It's a rite of passage. My favorite book of all time that I wrote. So it's sold separately. Is my poem selected anew. So when I started writing, this was my dream book. I said to myself that someday I will write a poem, a selected and new collection. And in 2018, UST Publishing House let me put this out. So it's called Each Sold Separately. So it includes poems from my first collection, The Most Careful of Stars, my second collection, Faulty Electric Wiring, and it includes some new poems. So this is still available from UST. And it's my favorite book of all time because it's the book that when I go to sleep at night, it makes me happy that I wrote it. So those are my favorite books as of the ones that I made. Of course, I love all my books. It's like choosing between your children, but these are the books that come to mind when I think about that. So I just wanted to throw that party trick in because I thought it was important.
Yeah, it was nice seeing your books,
Sorry,
actually.
that was my plan, my secret plan.
Oh, I have a question in relation to your books. So, do you go to publishers and pitch your ideas, or
That's a
like they
good
come
question.
and tell you to write about
That's
something?
a very good question. The first book that I approached the publisher. I pitched an idea. You usually do that. You usually pitch a publisher, and it's up to the publisher to decide whether or not to accept your pitch or not. Sometimes the publisher will do the opposite and pitch to you and say, "Can you do this for us?" The first book I was ever pitched, I never made because I didn't know how to make a book back then. It was a crime book. I was covering crime back then for the Inquirer, and they wanted me to do a crime book, and I didn't know the first thing how to do a book, so that book never happened. When you do stuff like collections, like poetry and stuff like that, it's a little easier because you can put the material together and then you can bring it to a publisher and say, look, I have this collection, can you take a look at it? So that's much easier. You have a body of work, so they'll change a little thing, they'll do it together. I also help publish books for the Inquirer. So I'm the head of the book publishing arm of the Inquirer called Inquirer Books. It's our imprint. And so I generally plan books in advance. I approach people, can we do this book? We do get solicitations, and occasionally we will accept them. So that still works. But generally speaking, most books now function on a level where people still submit. But the chances of getting accepted on an unsolicited submission are very low. Simply because uh, the decision to publish a book is no longer in the hands of one person. It's no longer like before where one person is the publisher, is the marketing person, is the financial person. That's how it used to be. Today, there are four different people who have to decide. And you have to convince four different people to publish your book. So that is hard. So usually when you come in, there has to be a plan. And selling books is hard. Uh, the shelf space in this country is very small. Between national and fully booked, very small space. So you're fighting a lot of people. So right now, a lot of the independents like Mount Cloud in Baguio and Savage Mind in Naga carry a very good selection of Filipiniana books, which is important. And also the rise of the self-publisher. I think that the problem with having the bigger publishers sort of having a plan sort of marginalizes the self-publishers. And so ultimately now, if you want to have your own book, the easiest way is to publish it by yourself.
Mm.
The problem is distribution. You will have to sell it by yourself. You know, you want to buy my book, please buy my book. Uh,
No,
but
you
it
can sell it
works.
online naman.
No, but that's what I mean. Um,
Okay.
you have to make the effort. The distribution doesn't exist on its own. So
Right.
the publishers, they have to ensure. So selling online, which brings me to my next topic, works really well. And that also brings me to the idea of ebooks and digital books. In the
Mm.
pandemic, we are seeing a rise of ebooks and audiobooks
Mm-hmm.
because they are easily transmitted. People listening.
Right.
The Sandman book just came out on Audible. It is amazing. It is amazing. You people need to get that book. Um, and I think that this is part of the way of the future. Paper books will never go away. People love paper books. Just smelling a paper book when it's new, never gonna go away. Your shelf is going to be pretty with paper books. I judge people by the books on their shelves. It's my right.
What?
When I walk into someone's apartment, I judge what's on their shelves and how they arrange it. Okay?
Oh,
Because it's not, they didn't put it there by accident. Okay? So I judge that. You can't do that with ebooks. So, but ebooks are something that we will get used to and we will have more for.
Okay.
okay. Wait, sorry. I'm curious. How do you arrange your book? Is it alphabetical, by color, author, topic?
By whatever fits.
Okay.
You can see from the stack behind me, these are all graphic novels. I
Oh, that's a
stack
lot.
whatever fits.
Okay.
There are this every time I have people coming over to fix stuff or deliver stuff, the first thing they say is, ang dami niyong comics. And then the next thing they say is, ang dami niyong laruan. So that's always something that is happening a lot around here. Everybody needs their drugs. These are mine.
Okay, speaking of comics, you have interviewed a lot of big celebrities for, the big
Yes.
Marvel movies. Who's your favorite
Yeah.
Avenger and why?
My favorite Avenger as an actor or my favorite Avenger as a
Both.
character?
Yeah, character or actor.
My favorite Avenger is as a character's Iron Man. He
Okay.
has great story arcs. He's been written really, really well. Even though they keep rewriting his story about a
Mm.
man who is essentially dying because of something in his heart and he needs his suit to stay alive and he turns it into a weapon. He was a weapons dealer who becomes a hero. So I love Iron Man as a story. As an actor, um, I would probably say that as an actor, I like Chris Evans. I think Chris
Mm.
Evans is a great actor with a lot of range. He has the biggest biceps I have ever seen. He was sitting. I have seen Dave Batista's biceps. I have seen Chris Hemsworth's biceps. Chris Evans has the best biceps of them all. It's when he's sitting next to you and you realize how big he is, like physically. It's just amazing. When he was making Snowpiercer, Bong Joon-ho didn't want to hire him because he was too muscular and he was supposed to be, hungry. So they just dressed him
Yeah.
up, made him look thin. He's that big. So I love Chris Evans.
So nice guy to interview.
Yeah, incredibly. And he looks nice with the facial hair. He looks nice with
Okay.
facial hair.
Speaking of interviews, so could you tell us about the most exciting interview you've done so far for the Marvel movie franchise?
Most interesting interview done for the franchise. Okay, this is gonna nerd you out a bit. I have a lot of geekdoms, and so some of my interviews are a little weird. I was very excited to interview Karen Gillian, who plays Nebula,
Yeah.
because she is Amy Pond. So I'm a big Doctor Who fan. So interviewing her was a big deal. Interviewing her was a very big deal. Sebastian Stan, fun because I love the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier, if you count the Winter Soldier as an Avenger, I think the Winter Soldier would be my favorite Avenger because technically he's not an Avenger. In the comics, he's just one in the movies. But the Winter Soldier would be my favorite Avenger. So Sebastian Stan was a fun interview. Brie Larson. I know a lot of people hate on her, but she knows her stuff. I really wanted to meet her. The nicest guy of all of the Avengers I ever met was Paul Rudd. Paul
Yes.
Rudd
Yes, Emma
was
agrees.
so nice.
Finger
He was
hugs.
he was he was ridiculously nice. So that was amazing. Also, uh, this is funny. Um, Joe, were you with me on here? But Jeremy Renner was Jeremy
Yeah.
Renner was out of this world. He was unusual. He was a little
No,
unusual, wasn't he?
I think it's just surprising that he's kind of not like what he seems like on screen. Because when you watch him in movies, he seems so serious. And then when he he appears at a roundtable interview and he's like kind of quirky. It's weird.
That's one way of quirky is one way of putting it. I would say that. I wanted to move briefly from the DC, from the Marvel to the DC. I just wanted to say that in the DC interviews, I really liked interviewing Christian Bale because he is so serious. Unlike the Marvel people, they tend to be a little lighter, but Christian Bale was super, super, super serious. So you could tell that he took the Batman thing really
Right.
seriously, and that that
Isn't
was
it
that was yes.
isn't it harder to interview someone who's super serious? I feel like it's a little bit more um intimidating.
Yes, it was very, very serious. And we had interviewed him shortly after Heath Ledger's death. So it was for the Dark Knight, and he was quite serious about it. Uh, but the nice thing about him is that he knows his stuff. Like he's really an actor. So he really just likes to talk about that, and he plays one of the most iconic characters. One other thing I wanted to talk about is I like talking to people who work behind the screen. So the Russo brothers are a lot of fun to talk to. Recently over Zoom, two of my I got to talk to one of my favorite writers. His name is Greg Rucka. He wrote The Old Guard. So he's one of my idols, and I loved that. That was amazing.
Mm.
So it's always nice to see the people also who aren't just the actors, but the writers and all that. I got to interview Stanley, but it was just by email. So
Right.
sayang because,
Yeah.
it's Stanley. I got to interview Mike Mignola, who
Mm-hmm.
invented Hellboy, and Guillermo del Toro. So
Wow.
that was fun. And James
Mm.
Wan, who did The Conjuring, who is not scary at all. And who
Do
knew
you
he
do
would
you
make
even
Aquaman?
still get nervous?
Oh, I got starstruck once. I interviewed Marie Lozano will laugh at this story. I got starstruck interviewing Matt Damon. His eyes are so nice. I walked into a room and it was like, oh my god, it's Matt Damon. I even forgot to introduce myself. It was for The Martian, and
Okay.
that was a shock. So he's really nice. He was doing a really bad movie called The Great Wall. That was a horrible movie, but he was promoting The Martian at the time,
Mm.
so that was nice. That I got starstruck by that. I think when I interviewed Ben Stiller and Kristen Wiig for Walter Mitty,
Mm.
um, that was also. I mean, that was Ben Stiller and Kristen Wiig, so
Mm.
that was a bit special also.
Okay, so aside from Marvel movies, what else do you like watching?
That is a very good question. I watch a lot of sci-fi. So my go-to is sci-fi. I love sci-fi. I love book to movie adaptations. Book to movie adaptations are my thing. So Gone Girl,
Mm.
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I always want to see how they translate. The recent Murder on the Orient Express by Kenneth Branagh was
Mm.
pretty good. That was pretty good. It was well made. So
Mm.
I always want to see how they're going to translate the vision of the author on screen. It's a challenge because the book is always going to be better. Except when there's no book like Fantastic Beasts. So it's important that you have the source material and then see how they do from that. So I watch a lot of that. I will own up to recently watching a lot of Netflix's original stuff.
Mm.
Well, not original stuff. They've been doing a lot of comic book stuff that I really
Yeah.
like. The Old Guard, Warrior Nun. Uh, Netflix is at the point where they're making movies which are really like studio films now.
Mm.
They're practically like you can't distinguish them anymore from a Paramount or a Warner Brothers, and that's really
Yeah.
really impressive. Also, a little bit of a guilty pleasure. I like watching coming of age stories. I like watching some young adult. They're nice. You want to see what the young people are watching, even
Mm.
though they're not always happy. And my recent I watch a lot of Korean stuff. I don't know if Joe already knows this, but I am a K
I
drama
do.
stan. I do not listen to K-pop at all, but I am a big K drama stan, and I watch them regularly. My favorite K drama of all time is Goblin.
Mm.
Um, Chloe was fun, but Goblin rules. Recently, I have been watching Backstreet Rookie. I know everybody hates it, but I find it to be a lot of fun. My favorite K drama of all time is a movie called Il Mare,
Mm.
which stars my favorite K drama actress, Jun Ji Hyun. Um, I also like Suzy Bay. There's a new girl, si Kim Yoo Jung. She's fantastic. Uh, I love Mr. Sunshine. I wish Kim Tae Ri would come home and make more K drama. Uh, I also like Basilio. me into watching that. I'm now watching some Japanese stuff, which I didn't used to do. They're not as good as the K drama stuff, but they're good enough.
Mm.
And also my guilty pleasure. I love watching Lifetime movies. Have you ever watched a Lifetime movie?
I
I
haven't.
Lifetime
think I
movies
have,
are
pero matagal na.
Lifetime movies are horrible, but they're just ridiculous. Like Killer Vacation and Home Killing Queen and Mother May I Sleep with Danger. Uh, I just love watching these movies, which are just really ridiculous, but you can't stop watching them. So I watch a lot of TV right now and a lot of streaming. So I'm also watching a lot of the older shows, which I haven't watched in a long time. Things I love like The West Wing, Alias. My
Oh,
favorite all time show is Fringe and Cold Case. So watching a lot of that also. So as you see, I have a lot of time on my hands when I'm not working.
Mm. Okay,
Sorry,
so
watching a lot of things.
um, I'll start with some of the questions from our viewers. This one is from Cecil of Manila. Have you been sent a Youngblood essay, not in English, but you still published it because it was really good?
That's a problem because the newspaper is in English.
Mm-hmm.
So Gibbs Cadiz is the Young Blood editor. So he takes care of um, the daily Young Blood. We just take care of the books. So I wouldn't know how to answer that. I think theoretically it would be possible if it were really good, but it would be very hard. But generally, please write in English.
Okay. You want to ask the next question?
ah, yeah. This is from Seya Ilagan. So she's asking, how about the writers above 30 or even 40? So what's your advice for those who want to get into writing after 30? Since
Okay,
Youngblood caters to the ones under 30.
okay, I have a very good answer to that. So we have two sets of columns in the Inquirer. One of them is called Young Blood, which is for youngers under 30. We have
Mhm.
another set of columns called High Blood, which is for senior citizens. All right? Anyone in between is fair game. So if you are between the ages of 30 and 60, you have to
Mm.
try your best to be one of the others. Okay, you have to stand out by yourself. You have to try and get published on your own because this is the considered the range of writers. That is the professional range of writers. When you are between those ages, you should already be publishing or writing professionally. So you just have to give it your best shot. I don't think anyone is going to come up with a column for writers between 30 and 60 because that's everybody else. So you're just going to have to be good at it. And may I note that it's not just print. You know, we have a bias for print because we grew up with it.
Mm.
I've heard a lot of parents make this weird comment where, oh, you got published? Oh, I got published online. Oh, it's not. Hindi totoong
Yeah.
na-publish ka. Online lang yan, no? A lot of the online stuff is curated.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of the online stuff is edited. If you find the right outlet, you might as well, like Spot, you might as well have been published by print. And I think that online is a very good place to go. Here's the problem: being published in your blog is not being published. You have to find an outlet as well. So, for
Mm.
those of you who write blogs or Facebook, find an outlet which is curated because you have readers and the readers are important. Spot has a lot of readers. You need the readers. If you write by yourself, no one reads it except you or your friends. So
Grabe.
you need to have an outlet. You need to have
Mm.
people who will like you and read you. The most important thing a writer has is his byline.
Yeah.
And if you keep using your byline over and over again in something like Spot, for example, they'll start looking for you.
Mm.
The most important thing is when people will say, you know what, I don't know what this article is about, but this guy or girl writes really well. So
Mm.
I am going to read this article because I like the writer.
Yeah.
That is what you should aim for,
Yeah.
regardless of platform.
Okay, so here's another one from Irene Perez. Hi,
Hmm.
Rui, asking for a friend, why are bad food reviews discouraged?
I have a very good answer to that. When I was in school, I had a wonderful teacher. Her name was Dr. Doreen Fernandez. One of the greatest food writers the country has ever seen. She had the best food column. It was called In Good Taste, and she would write about restaurants. And she once told me, this is the same reason why I don't do a lot of bad reviews. In the
Mm.
Philippines, when people read newspapers, they do not make the distinction between bad reviews and good reviews. When they see a restaurant written in a newspaper, they
Mm.
assume it is an endorsement. They will say, nabasa ko sa dyaryo eh. So, maganda siguro yon. So, automatically, when you write about something in print, no matter what you have to say, people will assume you're endorsing it. People will put up the newspaper and say, see, it's in the newspaper. And they will
Yeah.
go there and they will eat. And they will blame you. So,
Pag hindi
the
masarap.
best, yeah, so the best thing to do about bad restaurants and bad writers is to consign them to oblivion. Forget they exist. Do not
Good
write
point.
about them,
Yeah.
because sooner or later, people are gonna figure it out. Just ignore them and they will go away. Because the more that you write about them saying they're bad, they're bad, they're bad, people will be like, oh,
Talaga
you
ba?
know, they're in the newspaper all the time, so maybe there's something. And there are contrarians out there who like going to bad places. And that's not what we want. We do not want them reading bad books. We do not want them eating at bad places. We do not want
Mm.
them watching bad shows. So ignore, 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 consign to oblivion. Let us
Yeah.
highlight the good ones. Let us try our best to point our attention at the ones they should be reading, eating, and watching. That
Mm.
is what I was taught, and I believe that to this very day, and I teach that to all my students.
That's a very, very good point, I think.
Okay, here's a
Um,
But bad
question
reviews,
from
but bad reviews
Joe.
are fun to read. They're fun to read. That's why people still write them. I mean, they're fun to read. They're not very useful, but they're fun to read.
mm.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a question from Mark Serbo. He's
Okay.
saying,
Hi,
you're a
Mark.
Transformers fan. What do you expect from War
Yes.
for Cybertron Siege on Netflix?
I'm very excited. So I'm a very big Transformers fan since I was a kid. I've followed the Transformers through the years. Um, so I hated the Michael Bay movies. I thought they were really, really bad. I really liked the Bumblebee movie, especially the parts about Cybertron. And this is the closest thing we're going to get. Unlike other people, I do not like Transformers which are based on Earth. I like Transformers which are based on Cybertron. And this series is about Transformers on Cybertron. It's also very dark. I wish that they had gotten Peter Cullen and Frank Welker to do the voices. I love this line. I love the Transformers Siege line. I have two of them. I have the Ultra Magnus and I have the Impactor from this line. They're wonderful and I look forward to them. It's July 30, so they premiere today. So that's what I will be doing after this. I will be watching this, Mark, and it's the first of a trilogy. This Earthrise and the other one. So I will be watching it. I know you will be watching it. Looking forward to it. The animation looks great. It's from the people who did Machina. They're called Rooster Teeth now. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so I think we should wrap things up because it's past 9.
So we can
um,
watch the show.
yeah, so
I
we'll let you.
can stay all day if you want. I'm fine.
Magtatrabaho pa kami ni MM eh. No, but really, our last question is, what are you looking forward to doing after the quarantine is over?
Okay. So I have two answers to that question. The first question has to do with what am I going to do while the quarantine is going on? Okay.
Mm.
So the quarantine is not going to be going away for a very, very, very long time. That is a reality we have to accept. And what we have to do is find the things that we are either good at or enjoy during the quarantine. For me, it is again watching a lot of things. I have to read a lot of books. Um, I will buy a lot of toys online because I enjoy that. Mostly, I'm going to write, and not because uh, you know how that thing they say where you have to spend your quarantine time productively. No, it's I
Yeah.
like writing. It's my job. My job fortunately allows me to work from home. And I really find that writing right now is very, very helpful because your energy is put into a productive process with an output. Like it's not a never ending process. You feel that when you finish an article or an essay that you've done something, and it doesn't have to be a new skill. So I try to find things to write about. So that's one thing. I have a lot of projects that are thinking, man. I wanted to talk about the podcast just very briefly. I
Oh
forgot
yeah,
to talk
right.
about the podcast
Yeah, yeah.
very quickly. So the Inquirer has a new series of podcasts. We're working with a company called Bunga Podcast, the best podcast company in the country. So we have several podcasts coming out. Tina Dumlao has a podcast called Oxlang, which is about OPM. My friend Ruth Navarra Mayo has a podcast called Let's Talk Opa, which is about learning how to use Korean. Uh, and I have a podcast called Super Random. So my podcast is Pinoy Pop Culture. It's about
Mm.
anything Pinoy pop culture. It premieres in August. I've been doing a lot of that. My first two episodes are about That's Entertainment and Ang TV. So I have been a That's Entertainment and Ang TV fan for the longest time, and I finally get to use that useless knowledge in a piece of professional work. So there are 6 episodes in my series. So it will be available on Spotify, on Anchor, and on Apple Podcasts. So we'll let you know when that's coming out. I'm doing a lot of work for it. So that's something that we're doing. We're doing a lot of webinars. Webinars are a thing right now. So we're doing a lot of that. School is coming up. So I am preparing to teach in August. Now, what am I going to do after the pandemic is over? Because I'm immunocompromised, I cannot leave until the house until there's a vaccine. So
Mm.
because of that, I will be in here for a very long time. Luckily, I'm a homebody and I have a great companion. So I'm surrounded by things and people I love. So because of that, I'm gonna be here a long time. But when it's finally over, I am going to go to Seoul. I am going to go to Tokyo. Those are things on my list. I am going to go to Naga City. I am going to go to Baguio. I'm going to go and eat in a restaurant, but only when the GCQ is lifted because it's crazy to be eating out right now. And I will eat the food that I cannot eat. I miss risotto. I miss a lot of food that I can't eat here. I miss steaks. I miss a lot of things. So I would be eating a lot. And generally speaking, I want to be in the sunshine. I have a vitamin D deficiency, and not being out is exacerbating that. I would like to be in the sunshine a little bit more. I miss my office, to be honest. I haven't been in the office since March 13, and I miss it. I know that sounds really weird considering usually you hate your office, but I miss my office. I miss my office mates. I miss the nonsense and the chaos uh, in the office. The normalcy probably will never be back the way it was before, but I just wish for a little bit of the normalcy. I miss the post office. I miss picking up my books from the post office, one of my favorite achievements. And of course, I miss the bookstores. One of the greatest joys in life is just browsing a bookstore. When you walk through a bookstore and it's just spine after spine after spine after cover after cover after cover, different colors, different books, just looking at them. I try to do that here at home, but they're my books. I already know what these books are. But to go to a bookstore and then look at books which aren't yours yet
Mm.
and look at the possibilities, that's something I really, really miss.
Mm. Okay, so on that note, we'll say bye for now. Thank you, everyone who's stayed with us through this live stream. Hope to see you again next time. Bye.
Guys, thank you. Thank you everybody for listening in. I hope I said something that made sense. I'm sorry for being late. I fell asleep. Thanks to Spot.ph. Thanks to everybody who listened today. Thanks, MM. Thanks,
Thank
Joanna.
you.
It was an honor.
Bye.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.